Alright, come on. What could we do with these two? No, that's an awful idea. We'll save that one for 2006. Green eyes in 2D? Yep. Following Sonic Pocket Adventure's example, Sega decided it was time for the Hedgehog to return to his roots, but in his card form, since, you know, they hadn't caught classic Sonic fever yet. The Hog's 10th anniversary was rolling around, so of course, they knew they had to do something special. Enter Dimps, a company that as far as I'm aware had never made a game before entering the ring with Sega's first ever foray onto Nintendo hardware, Sonic Advance. Of course, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle would hit the GameCube pretty soon after Advance's release, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, I hated this game when I was a kid. The only Sonic game I played before Advance was Sonic Adventure DX, so when I got my hands on Advance, I was not interested because I found it inferior. I was also really bad at it, so that probably contributed to the disdain a little bit. Fast forward to last week when I was waiting for my class break to be over, I got a strange hankering to dive back into the game, and I was pleasantly surprised with what I experienced. Well, for the most part. Since the early 2000s, I've had a bit more experience with 2D Sonic, and I was able to squeeze a little bit more fun out of something I previously wrote off as mediocre. Don't get your hopes up. Sonic Advance in essence is a successor to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, albeit on a slightly smaller scale. What we have here is 7 actual zones with 2 final boss zones, as opposed to Sonic 3 and Knuckles' 14 zones, but technically that was 2 games Frankenstein together, so I don't really see a huge problem with that. An upside to Advance, though, is that it includes 4 playable characters instead of the 3 found in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. We've got our classic trio back in action, of course, and for the first time in a 2D game, we've got Amy Rose, complete with a totally unique and somewhat frustrating moveset. I guess you could say they were really trying to advance the formula. Because of all that, some people actually adamantly refer to this game as the true Sonic 4, and I can see why. It predates the actual Sonic 4 by 8 or 9 years and does just about everything better in the grand scheme of things. But then again, I think that's a bit of blasphemy. Sega labeled these games like this on purpose. You don't see people going around calling the New Testament the Old Testament too, now do ya? So we have a little bit of a story going on here, and thankfully, unlike some games that have released since, this one doesn't require any 30-minute recap videos to help you figure out what's going on. Dr. Eggman is up to no good. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy don't like that one little bit, so they head off to stop him, and maybe find some shiny rocks along the way. That's it. Sonic Advance does not waste your time. Our 4 friends here have their word cut out for them though, as throughout Sonic Advance they'll have to traverse through some treacherous facilities, glaciers, and casinos, all before they arrive at their dastardly foe's doorstep to put an end to his scheme. First on our itinerary, we've got Neo Green Hill Zone. Though I never really understood why they called it that, because it's more beach than Green Hill for the first act, at least. We do delve more into the Green Hill-like aesthetics here and there, but I think Dimps and Sonic Team were just feeling a little nostalgic on this one. There's not too much here that'll trip you up on your first run, though. Just standard Sonic fare. You'll find yourself some badniks, some monitors, rings, springs, and that's pretty much it. There's also this really neat wall running section towards the end of Act 1, and aside from being a really nice set piece, you might just want to store this area in your brain, for later. Trust me. Much like Sonic 2 and 3, at the end of Act 2 you come across a boss fight, typically with one of Dr. Eggman's crazy contraptions. The first of which is this hammer device that Eggman tries to flatten you with, perhaps taking cues from Amy Rose? Who knows? Eggman doesn't really seem that into it though, because he swings the hammer really daintily and doesn't get serious about it until he's already dead. Alright, raise your hands if that scared you a heck of a lot more than MC Hammer over here. Zone 2 brings the gang to Secret Base. Well, I guess the secret's out then. This area spices things up a bit with pulleys and tight spaces. I was worried at first that this whole stage is going to be dimly lit like the starting bit, but thankfully that wasn't the case. It is a nice set piece though. This stage introduces some new movement options for the gang, including these wires you can spin across and either launch yourself up or down to grab monitors or reach new areas. We also have these blocks that rotate your character a good 360 degrees, and I absolutely love how Sonic keeps that snarky look on his face the whole time as if it ain't no thing. And there are also other various pulley-like contraptions that hoist you up to different pathways if you grab them. Less frequently, you'll also see these hooks swinging from the ceiling that are sometimes necessary for you to continue progressing down the path you're on, and sometimes they just lead to extra little goodies or alternate routes. Suffice to say, this stage is going to throw you around a lot, and it can be a little confusing since the stage doesn't really have many areas that distinguish themselves when it comes to appearance. Act 2 introduces these little steam vents that shoot platforms into the air, but if you've played Oil Ocean before, you should understand how these work. Act 2 is a bit more of the same until you reach our dedicated boss encounter with Dr. Eggman. This time he comes at you with this pogo stick mech that, again, feels about as threatening as the first boss of Sonic CD, meaning not at all. And after a few hits, Eggman launches himself into the air in an effort to crush you, which isn't an insta-kill, thankfully, and then the fight ends. Alright, why is it that these capsules are better at harming Sonic than Eggman is? Casino Paradise is up next, because of course it is! Can't have a Sonic game without a casino level, right? Thanks, Sonic 2! No, seriously, thanks. These things are fantastic, I love them. Casino Paradise is home to many of the gimmicks that you've come to know and love. Bumpers all over the place, pinball, balloons, weird gizmos that transport you from one place to the other, and of course Sonic's name plastered everywhere, because I think deep down Eggman really just wants to impress his nemesis. Plus, that music. Is it a good time now to talk about the soundtrack? I'm gonna say yes. Oh my god, this game. Sonic might have a reputation to have some real bombs in terms of gameplay, but at least we can always count on the soundtrack being filled with ear-melting goodness. Alright, well maybe like 99% of the time, at least. If you haven't listened to this game's soundtrack, you should. Even if you're not interested in the game itself, the GBA sound chip works wonders here, and I don't hear people talking about it nearly as much as they should be. In terms of level design though, this one isn't as claustrophobic as Secret Base, but it isn't as open as Neo Green Hill. But coming from Secret Base, this one does feel a bit like paradise. The second act shows off these cool neon letters where Eggman decided that advertising for Sega might net him some brownie points, and cold hard cash of course, and we also get these strange warp holes. Never really seen anything like that in a real casino, since they typically want you to sit in one spot and never move, as opposed to traversing dimensions and possibly finding an exit. So then you just keep on losing rings to rigged games until Eggman shows himself once again, but look! He made a friend! Isn't that sweet? Eggman and his new BFF will randomly enter and exit these tubes, so you have to be careful not to get poked in the eye by this one, but you also have to get ready to give Eggman the good old 1-2. Eventually they do go a little bit faster, but it's really no big deal. It kinda reminds me of the final boss of Sonic 1 since there's a bit of a guessing element involved, but thankfully it's not nearly as insta-killy as that one. Ha! I was ready for you that time! Oh boy, okay. Now this stage here is the one that gives me the most terrifying flashbacks when I think about this game. Ice Mountain Zone is a combination ice and water level. What an unfortunate tag team. I feel like pretzels and cyanide are a better mix than that, and that would definitely be less painful. This is your typical Sonic Ice level though. There are some snow drifts here and there that make you move a little bit slower, but you can jump out of them. There are also some ice cap references, but what'd you expect? It's an anniversary game. The Penguinator also appears in this level, which makes me pretty happy, but honestly that's where my positive feelings towards this level end. You are going to be spending a lot of time underwater, and you know what that means. Bubbles aren't too hard to come by, thankfully, but I guarantee you're going to end up dying at least a few times because of the underwater platforming and stupid junk like that. Act 2 dials things up a bit and adds in yet more underwater sections, and this really scary bit where you need to jump on these oil ocean gimmicks while you're underwater. Also, do me a favor and don't jump over this spring. Somehow I fall for this, no pun intended, every single time at least once. But that is not the scariest thing about this level. The thing that has haunted my nightmares since I was a little kid is right up ahead. Eggman wisened up. He took all our greatest fears and made them a reality. Welcome to Ice Mountain's boss, Underwater Spider Eggman. This is actually where I stopped as a kid. I never made it past this. When I rolled into this area the other day, I let out an audible "oh no" when I realized what I just gotten myself into, and it still sucks, but I was able to do it this time. This thing has some serious layers to it though, let me tell you. On one hand, you might be compelled to try and attack Eggman as fast as possible to end your suffering sooner, but if you skimp out on too many chances to breathe, you're not going to be in good health for much longer. If you take it slow though, you risk being bullied by Eggman and losing your rings, and also the fight going on for far longer than it needs to. You need to split your interests between violence and breathing if you ever want to escape here. It's sort of a struggle. Well, as Sonic at least, Tails makes this boss fight look like a total joke. And that just goes to show that sometimes the kid ain't so bad. Now on to Inferior Island Zone. Not inferior in terms of how easy it can kill you, of course, but easily the lesser of the two zones that share the same name. But how could you possibly top something as iconic as Green Hill version 3? Angel Island Zone is not very fun most of the time. There are a million pathways to take, which is nice, but they're all wrought with dangerous obstacles and things that make you wish you were back in Ice Mountain. And that's saying a lot, considering I mentioned how it caused me lifelong trauma. Act 1 isn't the worst thing in the world, I guess. We get introduced to some of the gimmicks, such as fans that blow you around, clouds you bounce off like in Sky Sanctuary, but they're really just those platforms from Secret Base, and numerous irritating spike pits and regular pits. There are also these really fun platforms you have to run on to elevate or lower yourself, and by fun, I mean slow and boring. We also get sand waterfalls that act like the ones from Sandopolis, but those are pretty innocent. None of this can compare to Act 2 though, as it shows you it means business almost immediately by incorporating a bottomless pit at the very start of the level. The only thing standing between you and imminent death is mastery of these dingy little clouds, and honestly, I don't trust them. Other than that, Act 2 is just a careful trek to the end where we come face to face with... Knuckles? Come on, dude, Eggman tricked you again? What is this, like the 5th time now? Wait a second. Something seems fishy here. Wait, I got it. Knuckles doesn't wear yellow gloves. Also, I'm Knuckles. Go ahead and smack this faker around a little bit until his true form is revealed. This boss's name is Mecha Knuckles, and yes, I googled that because the robotic doppelgangers in this series tend to have very specific names for each of their incarnations, and it turns into a war zone in the comments if one is ever misidentified as another. He starts off the fight by doing a fairly decent Knuckles impression, defying physics and all that, but once he sheds his skin, yeah, I think this is where the whole fake Knuckles charade kind of falls apart. Look, we all know echidnas are weird, but I don't think they're this weird. Dispatch the faker and he blows up horrifically into a million pieces. Good night, Mecha Knuckles. Now, I fear that I'm getting into a bit of a routine by starting these level introductions with negativity, but Egg Rocket Zone is upsetting. The level is pretty unique, as it reminds me a lot of the Super Mario Bros. 3 levels that had an emphasis on vertical movement instead of the traditional horizontal movement, but does that work for Sonic? Yes and no. Since Sonic moves pretty quickly, forcing him into a variety of tight spaces with really annoying obstacles and routes that intentionally throw you back downwards and force you to redo things you've already done do not come across as fun, especially the first time through. There's no way you would know that this booster here would throw you back down a couple levels and just give you one invincibility power-up to make up for it. That's just rude. And on top of that, you're on a stricter time limit for the stage as well. When you reach certain areas, the game stops you and you see a segment that you were just platforming on break away as the rocket is flying higher and higher. This means that if you can't reach the next checkpoint area within the allotted time, Sonic is going skydiving through the atmosphere. The time limits are generous enough, but if you dawdle too much, you are definitely going to have issues. Thankfully, when you hit the next segment, you do get time added back onto the timer. Dimps aren't totally heartless, but honestly, every obstacle thrown into the stage gives me anxiety, and you'll see what I mean if you play through it yourself. All in all, it's a pretty interesting idea for a level, but it's just annoying. That's how I describe it, annoying. Once you reach the top of this beast, you enter a rocket exhaust port, and then you end up in Cosmic Angel Zone, which technically means that Egg Rocket and this only have one act each, but I kinda saw them as one zone. Now, after the test of patience that was Egg Rocket, I was expecting Cosmic Angel to be a slog as well, but thankfully it's really quick by comparison. Though we do have to deal with some gravity gimmicks here, which you know how fun those are. They're honestly not really that bad when they pop up, and I don't find them to be excessive. So other than that, it's just standard Sonic stuff, nothing really to write home about, or to write in the script either. Also, unrelated to level design, but this stage is beautiful. This whole game looks so dang good, dude. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think the Advanced Series art style is my favorite 2D look in the entire series. Yes, including Mania. The GBA housed a lot of my favorite art styles, to be honest, and I don't know if that's more of a nostalgia thing talking, but I mean, I'm definitely not nostalgic for Advance, so maybe not? Now, Eggman's newest device is actually sort of brilliant. He hides his weak spot underneath the stage, and he lets Sonic crash into spikes over and over again until he dies. But unfortunately for Eggman, Sonic weighs enough to tip things into his favor. Literally, in fact. Though the boss fight is still a bit of a struggle. If you get hit here, your rings don't stay on the platform, they just peace out. You better have some quick reflexes or else this fight is going to be even harder. Eggman also does these little speed boosts toward the end of the fight, and they can be maddening if you've got no rings left to spare. But once you've fought through it, the jig is up and you're on your way to the mysterious X-Zone. Now, X-Zone isn't a traditional zone, but more like a small boss rush with some familiar faces. Again, just like to point out, Sonic Advance did it before Sonic 4. First up, we've got Eggman's Gutsman, the Wrecking Ball. He loves this thing to death, even though he knows it's never gonna get the job done. Afterwards, he breaks out the drill car from Sonic 2. That's fun, right? We even get some nice Sonic Advance-styled remixes for their respective boss themes, and I am a sucker for that, let me tell you. After Eggman's finally done cashing in his nostalgia bucks, he brings out the big guns. Or whatever you want to call this, because this thing is definitely not that big, or a gun, most of the time. Eggman is totally protected of this thing, except for when he's attacking you, so you either need to wait like the patient little hedgehog you are, or you can be stupid like me and die. Don't be like me, kids. This fight can definitely drag on for a little bit, but it's not that difficult, and that's the end of Eggman for now. Assuming you don't have all the Chaos Emeralds, that is, and I don't expect you to, because where the hell are they? Back in time again, when I was a little kid, I didn't even know this game had Chaos Emeralds. Even playing it through again this time, I knew they were there, but they're hidden so well in the levels that I didn't come across even one of them on my own, despite the fact that I searched high and low for these things. Unlike Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Dimps took a step backwards when it comes to special stages. Instead of hiding several special rings around the stages, they instead elected to hide one special spring in a certain act of each zone. Want my advice when it comes to these things? Either use Tails or don't bother. As Sonic or Amy, if you even mess up a slight bit while trying to take the path to one of these things, you're usually totally out of luck and you have to reset the stage. Thankfully, I don't think it matters who you collect the emeralds with as long as you go and reconquer AshZone with Sonic afterwards. So, fly, my son. Fly. When you finally find one of these darn things, probably after looking at some guide on YouTube, you get launched into space where you're free-falling down this tube area. And wouldn't you know it, surprise, surprise, you're supposed to collect the amount of rings they show at the top of the screen. And it's not awesome. The GBA makes it a little bit hard to tell where exactly you're supposed to position yourself so that you actually collide with these things. So I found myself missing little clumps of them here and there, and I didn't even really feel like it was my fault. There are also these little zones that if you pull off a trick while passing through, you get bonus rings, and they'd probably save you from failure. Not that I got to experience that, though. Go through that 7 times and you've got all your emeralds. Don't bother trying to turn into Supersonic during normal gameplay, though. We're not exactly at the point yet where Sega cared about that. Flashing back to AshZone, Sonic transitions into Moon Zone, where Eggman has built a big ol' mech and he's just floating through space. Can't have that, now can we? As Supersonic, you gain a little air dash move, but it doesn't really get you that far. Also, you're not flying, more so just running along the ground like normal, and you jump up to hit him right in his stupid idiot face. This doesn't really feel like a Supersonic fight, until you remember that you're relying on rings to stay alive, and then you die. And die. And die. You can rebuild your stash by hitting these robots, but unlike the underwater fight, it's really in your best interest to just ignore them entirely and bash Eggman as fast as possible to finish things up. Sonic firmly tells Eggman that his midnight spacewalks aren't okay and gives him a slap on the wrist, and then he ventures out into the great unknown, allowing his friends to believe that he probably died in the scuffle. A few days then pass, and Tails just so happens to see something shiny in the distance, so like the weak-minded bird he is, he flocks towards it, and wouldn't you know it, it's Supersonic. Looks like he just forgot to call home and say he'd be out late. The end. Ooh boy, you know what, whatever dude, you can keep your insta-shield, spin dash, rail grinding, and weird hard-to-use air boost to yourself. I'm gonna go hang out with the rest of the gang. When playing as Tails, you do exactly what you'd expect him to do coming from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. He can fly around and find secrets for you, but he can also do this neat little tail whip thing, which probably isn't useful for many things now that I think about it. Knuckles can do little punch attacks and an uppercut combo, but again, probably not super useful for a lot of things. But he also carries over his gliding and climbing, which could be used to help find secrets, but really it's just better to go with Tails. Now, Amy being the newcomer, you'd expect they'd make her really fun to play. I'm really up in the air on that one, because on one hand, her playstyle is really interesting, but it's basically hard mode, whether you like it or not. Amy never curls into a ball like the other characters, so she's literally vulnerable all the time. If you jump, you better follow it up with a hammer spin, because if not, you're getting Simon Belmonted backwards into God knows what. She can use her hammer when she's on the ground as well. Much like Sonic Adventure, she can do like a little hammer swing along the ground, or she can hold the down button, press the B button, and launch into the air a little bit. She also lacks a spin dash for whatever reason, so instead she does these dumb little hops, and if you press the B button again while you're doing the hops, you do like this little slide move, and it's just a big letdown. I don't know, that's kind of one of the worst things about her in my opinion, aside from the not curling into a ball thing. I guess the really only saving grace I could see here is that if she uses the hammer attack in the air, it's a little bit more of a reach than the insta-shield Sonic has, but maybe in the Ice Mountain boss to be pretty useful? Other than that, I don't really see why she's anything more than a hindrance to play as. And I guess Dimps thought so too, since she was changed a lot in Sonic Advance 2. If you actually managed to unlock her, that is. And once you're done with the main game, wouldn't you know it, there's also a side mode featuring one of Sega's greatest creations, the Chao. If you access the tiny Chao Garden from the main menu, you can take care of a little virtual pet from within your Game Boy Advance, sort of like a $30 Tamagotchi. You can buy your Chao's toys to play with, or just fruit to eat to increase their stats, and you can also play minigames with them to earn more rings. Understandably though, it was a little lackluster compared to the Chao Gardens of the adventure games, but wouldn't you know it, Sega came around and did something really cool. When Sonic Adventure 2 Battle launched for the Nintendo GameCube, you were able to use the Game Boy Advance GameCube connector cord to transfer your Chao from Sonic Advance to Sonic Adventure 2, or vice versa. This allowed you to take your favorite Chao on road trips and also allowed you to lose them when you misplaced your game cartridge. There were also specific eggs you could only get from the tiny Chao Garden, I believe, so if you were able to build up enough rings to get those by playing memory games, then all the power to you. So yeah, that's Sonic Advanced. It spawned 2 sequels, which both improved and detracted from the groundwork Dimps laid out here, and I'll be taking a look at them sometime too, because I've never actually finished 2, and I've never ever played 3, except for like 2 minutes in the first level. Sonic Advance is interesting to me. Can't say it's one of my favorite games, but it's certainly not bad. And speaking of not bad, there's actually this really amazing fan game in the works called Sonic Advance Revamped, created by my friend Lunar Alexander, Alex Revamped, or whatever the heck he's going by these days. He tends to shift around a little bit. Advance Revamped is a PC game, so right off the bat, you're not restricted to the tiny screen size of the GBA. This game runs at 1080p 60 FPS, and it's gorgeous. The levels are all faithfully being ported over, and having annoyances corrected to make them more fun to play. The game also employs a very well-made classic Sonic game engine, so the games even feel a bit more like the classics, all the while giving off that wonderful Sonic Advance vibe that I've come to know and love. Oh, and he removed the special springs and added multiple special rings to the levels. And there's several new characters to play as well, which are entirely optional and don't affect the story of Advance, but are there just for you to mess around with on subsequent playthroughs. You can check out the most recent demo for that in the description below, and I highly recommend you do so, because in my opinion, I feel like this will be the definitive way to play the game once it's actually finished. If you enjoyed the original, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I did too. But having something this ambitious on the horizon is just a really nice thought, and I can't wait to see all the cool stuff Alex puts into this. So that's going to be all for today, so if you like this video and you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, click the bell, follow my Twitter, and join the Discord to keep up with more Sonic reviews and other things that aren't Sonic reviews, because I do a lot of things. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to my current sponsors, Cringe Channel, Supersonic99 of CCI Games, Nick46, Jaded Indolent, Bob the Hedgehog Gamer, Cosmic Mushroom, Lucas Tallman, Nico the Person, Mitron, Kenneth Gutierrez, Knuckles Channel 3 and Knuckles, Henry S., Rob Morrison, Mega Trafficone Creative, and Mike TGC. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring, it really means a lot. If you have any interest in becoming a sponsor yourself, please make sure to check out the link in the description for more information and all the benefits, such as being shouted out at the end of every single video and stream. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.